Christian, some things never change at Red Bull, other things change massively. It's just the party that grew.
Yeah, and welcome to Milton Keynes.
I know,
Great to
it's been
see
a
you.
while.
But yeah, it's just ever expanding.
Still the Stewart building.
Yeah, because this
GYS.
was the original Stewart Grand Prix building.
Yeah.
We've named it the Stewart building. I'm expecting Jackie to send me an invoice for it, but
Image rights.
but that's where it all started. But it's grown so much.
It's just changed so much. How long has it been here now?
This must have been here since 1995,
Yeah.
and then we came obviously 10 years later.
Wow.
And then it's grown enormously from there. So I'll give you a quick look
Give me a
round
tour.
at what the latest venture is. This is the latest part of our story. So what used to be an old warehouse is having a minor upgrade. And going to
Grand
be
designs.
Exactly, it's going to be the home to the engine facility. So
When will this be ready?
well, we're in week 25, and it's got to be ready for April next year. So so yeah, the guys are working Formula One timescales.
It's amazing. It does not look like this is going to be producing some of the most developed engines anywhere in the world at this stage, does it?
It's incredible how quickly it's changing though. We've got the dynos arriving in October. They come and get lifted in a crane. And it's massive. We're recruiting obviously aggressively at the
Yeah.
moment, so we're bringing in some great talent. And to be doing this in the UK is really exciting. So using the hub that we have here and the synergies that we'll get with the chassis side, we're the only team in Formula One other than Ferrari to have the whole lot on one site.
This must be the first time in the UK for many, many years that engines will be built here.
I think that you've got to go right back to Cosworth
Yeah.
or Ilmore,
yeah.
you know, before that. But in terms of
Wow.
a team building and manufacturing cars and engines, you've got to go really back to the likes of BRM, you know, those kind of manufacturers. So, you know, it's fantastic that Red Bull have made this commitment to the sport. They've made this commitment, you know, to the UK and the talent that's within the UK. And we're just you know, grateful for the quality of people that we're attracting to this project.
So does this make your job easier, or is it just another headache? Because you've had to go out and try and find engines in the past, and it's not
Yeah.
always been easy, and some competitors have been reluctant to help you out. Is this a godsend in a way?
Oh, it's both. I mean, we're taking control of our own destiny. So, of course, it's more responsibility, it's more work. But if you apply the same basics to making chassis as engines, it's about the right people, the right equipment, the right approach and philosophy. We've demonstrated we can do it on the chassis side.
Yeah.
A lot of people have written us off on the engine side already. Again, how can an energy drink make a competitive engine? But you know, that's all the motivation we need to say, yeah, we can, and time will tell.
I did the last year of F3000 when you were in charge of your own team,
That's a long
Arden.
time ago.
It was a very long
Yeah.
time ago. But one thing that you always said that you kind of prided yourself on when you came into Formula One, I always remember, was getting the right people around you.
Yeah.
And that's something that you have continued to do.
Yeah.
It's been a conscious decision to surround yourself with great people in these roles.
Yeah, I think you've got to have the right people in the right roles, and I think that's exactly the approach that we're taking with, you know, powertrain. So, you know, the technical director, you know, Ben Hodgkinson, that's joining us from you know, Mercedes. Again, another great talent, and the team that we're building, you know, around him, you know, strength and depth, and you know, we've managed to attract talent from other manufacturers, from other forms of motorsport as well, and also giving youth a chance, because that's been a big thing for us, is giving, you know, students and graduates, and we have a huge recruitment, you know, with the universities, and with probably up to 100 graduates and student placements and apprenticeships that we'll be looking to take on within, you know, chassis and engines.
How on earth do you manage your day with all this stuff going on, and you know, you're going to Russia in a couple of days' time, you're in a championship battle. How do you structure your time?
It's all about efficient use of your time. So where are the priorities? You can't control everything. You've got to rely on the people around you. You've got to empower the people around you. But of course, you've got to give the direction and the guidance. So, you know, we have a very clear, chain of command here, and information comes up the chain and it goes down the chain, and so therefore, I try to make sure that my time is being spent on the right things, strategically, operationally, and then of course the trackside is a whole other element.
And that's something which differs from other sports where you have a football manager or a coach or a team manager in rugby union or something like that, where there is really one person who is accountable. Yes, you're accountable, but you've got to put in those processes to make sure that you can't do everything, can you?
Yeah. No, look, Monday to Thursday, I am the CEO of a high-performing, industry of manufacturing, development, etc., on chassis and engine, and at the weekend, I'm the team principal of a high-performing sports team, and they're different caps that you have to wear. But that's part of the challenge of the role. That's you drive to work never knowing what the next challenge is going to be, and that's kind of the appeal of the job.
But you're a racer at heart, so is it almost a relief when you just get to sit on the pit wall and do what put you in this position in the first place?
I think when the red light comes on, then suddenly you're in your own world, you're in your comfort zone, you're in the part that you enjoy, that gives you the most satisfaction, and it's like being in this micro bubble for that period where it's just about the cars, the racing, the strategy. Everything else becomes secondary. Then the moment the checkered flag drops, everything changes. So, but that's the bit I really get a buzz from. When the light comes on, that's when you still get that massive adrenaline rush.
When you're on the pit wall, you're again surrounded by great people, and we hear a lot of different voices on team radio. So how involved are you in these big key moments?
Oh, absolutely involved, because the way we operate the pit wall is the operational side of the team in the race. So every role has its function to play, and of course I'm working very closely with the strategists and the team manager, from the sporting regulations, from the strategy, with the head of race engineering, Rocky, sitting to my right as well. But predominantly with the strategist during the race, looking at what are the options, the what-if scenarios, and weighing up risk versus reward. He'll present some options in front of me, but I've got to sign off how much risk versus reward are we prepared to take. And so it's very much a team thing, but ultimately somebody has to make a decision.
And that sounds like a very relaxed thing, but we are talking split seconds decisions. If Mercedes come in, then do you stay out? Do you come in? Do you try and get in before them? And there's so much going on. It can't just be a nice long chat, can it?
No, absolutely, and a lot of it's pre-discussed before the event. So we practice a lot. We run an awful lot of simulations. We have briefings before the race about the what-if scenarios and what our action plan for the race is. And by and large, we tend to stick to that. But of course, things you can't control are things like the weather.
Yeah.
That's where sometimes experience, can be extremely useful.
Well, it's great to see this and see just the huge progression of Red Bull. But I do want to talk about the small matter of a championship that you're in the battle for. So if we head back, we can start talking about that and everything that's to come. Well, Christian, just looking around, there is so much going on here at Red Bull, and it seems odd to say it, but it feels like a team on the up, which is really strange to say with a team with such a pedigree as Red Bull has. But does it feel like that again?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's just been constant evolution here. When we first started as Red Bull, it was the building behind us and one over the road, and now there's 11 buildings that some have been joined together, and they've all got different names now even. So and the team, we're in an exciting phase of our history. As the team's evolving, it's going to become a power unit manufacturer in the future, and it's really exciting.
It's incredible to think, just watching people coming and going out of the doors, the drivers, the names of the drivers that have come and gone out there, from David Coulthard, Sebastian Vettel, Mark Webber, and now it's a really exciting young, time again, I think, with Max and Checo.
Yeah.
They seem to be getting on well, touch wood, at the moment. But does it feel like that this is a pairing which is, going to be good for the future?
Well, it's a strong pairing. There's a good dynamic between the two of them. Checo's new to the team this year, so he's had to feel his way, in. He's been in another team for 7 or 8 years, so it's quite a big thing, to come into a completely new environment. But he's a really personable guy. He's working well with the engineering team. He's working really well with Max, and you can see he's very much a team player. And so the dynamic between the two is strong. And I think Max is now at that stage of his career where you can see that experience of over 100 races is now really starting to show he's gaining that, that bit of maturity, and he's been very rounded this year.
Over 100 races for Max Verstappen, still so young. It's incredible to think that, isn't it?
I mean, at 23 years of age, it's nuts. But yeah, he's when he joined us, he was 17, and now he's matured. We've seen huge evolution in that time, but still that raw speed, that raw aggression is still there, that makes him so exciting. But now he can balance that with the experience that he's gained along the way as well.
He's always been quite a spiky character, quite a precocious talent in the nicest possible way. When he started coming in at the age of, I think it was 16, when he first aligned himself with Red Bull, and that continues, and you can see that in how he races. He has such an incredible self-belief. He's
got great self-confidence, and he's just a racer. That's all he wants to do. He's not interested in any of the trappings of Formula One. You won't find him at A-lister parties or anything like that. He just wants to race, and that's his passion, that's his love. And if he's not in a racing car, he's racing a simulator. That's the generation that that he is, and I think that he's single-minded, like all top athletes have to be. But he's also a strong team player, and has a huge sense of loyalty to the team. And I think that that's what makes him so popular within the team, that everybody knows when you bolt him in the car, he's going to give you 110%.
And that sort of shone at Silverstone. There was a sense that even though he was in the medical centre and things like that, he almost felt that he'd let the team down, that there was a real loss of opportunity that weekend, and it wasn't his fault, as it were.
Yeah, he was obviously massively frustrated with the Silverstone outcome, because he'd done the hard work. He'd won the sprint race, he got the pole for the for the main race, for the Grand Prix, and having held the start, the P2 had been an advantage all weekend there. He managed to hold the start. It obviously got pretty tasty down the Wellington Straight, and then of course the accident, and it was a massive accident. 51G, it broke the seat. I think it knocked him out. And it was for sure the biggest accident of his career. So that was tough for him, and he was disappointed that he'd let the team down. That it was within the budget cap world that we are, it's a huge amount of accident damage as well. But quickly brushed himself down and said, look, on Monday, if I had to do the race again today, I could do it. Battered and bruised, it'll be a bit sore, but I could do it.
That weekend in many ways has set the tone for what we've seen since then, and there have been some great results and great scenes at Zandvoort, and Red Bull winning at tracks that we didn't necessarily think that they would win at. But I think what happened in Italy sort of shook us all to the core again, because it was the same two drivers, a big accident, big headlines, really scary when you saw the state of Lewis Hamilton's car. Now you've had time to reflect on that. What do you think of that?
Well, you've got two guys going for the World Championship. It's the biggest trophy in global motorsport, and both of them shouldn't have been there. Max had a long pit stop. We had an issue in the pit stop. Then Lewis had an issue in his stop. So the two of them arrive together at the first corner as Lewis is exiting the pits. And I think both of them knew it was crucial to come out ahead. And Max, being opportunistic, he wanted to go for it. He was relying on Lewis giving way. Lewis knew that if he conceded track position, that with their straight line speed issue that they had that weekend, that overtaking would be probably impossible. So you got two drivers that are desperate for that piece of tarmac, and inevitably the result was what it was. And it looked a dramatic accident. It was actually obviously at very low speed, and the nasty thing about it was the way that the car rode up, and obviously over the roll hoop and over the top of Lewis. And thankfully the halo earned its place in Formula One again. It did it at Silverstone with Max. It's done it so many occasions now, and also obviously with Lewis with that incident. But it was clear that both drivers were fine whilst Max was even still in the car. Lewis is trying to reverse his way out of the gravel. So the most important thing from that incident that was both of them were okay.
Max was critical of how Lewis celebrated at Silverstone. He thought it was out of keeping with the situation that had arisen that day. It looked on the television cameras that Max didn't even take a glance to see that Lewis was okay on Sunday. Have you spoken to him about that?
I think it's very different. I mean, Max in Silverstone, he hit the wall at 51G at 160 miles an hour, knocked out, airlifted to hospital. There's a big difference between that and the incident on Sunday in Monza, where he could feel Lewis reversing while he's still in the car. The engine's still running. He knew Lewis was absolutely fine. Indeed, the medical car didn't even see the necessity to even visit the scene. So I think it was a completely different, circumstance and scenario. And of course, big things get made of this. There's PR machines that go into motion. But it was a racing incident. He knew that Lewis was absolutely fine. He could feel him trying to reverse out the gravel, and so he was just disappointed that he'd lost an opportunity of a great result in Monza.
You've had to do your UN peacekeeping role before, mostly with your own teammates, but now that this is actually two different teams, is that harder to manage when you can only control one side of things?
No, it's much easier because you're just focused on your own performance. You can't control what's going on in the other team, and I think this battle this year has been one of the most intense in the last probably 20 years of the sport, and I think that it's two Goliaths of the sport going up against each other, and I think that it's what the sport's been craving, and we've been fighting so hard to get back into a competitive position. Finally, we've got a car, an engine, a driver to take the fight to Mercedes, and we're relishing that, and it's so competitive. That every point, every session counts, and I think it's going to be like that for the balance of the year.
It's not just Max and Lewis, or in the past Seb and Mark, or Lewis and Nico that we've heard getting a little bit testy. Unusually, there's been a bit of maybe not so friendly fire between you and Toto, and him calling you a windbag, and it all got a little bit public, a little bit messy in many ways. What's the sort of the feeling about that? Is that the way that team principals should behave?
I think that, look, it's a competitive sport, and there's competitive stakes. There's a competition on track, it's a competition off track. We've got a lot going on within the business as well, and of course it's the first time Mercedes, and the first time ever Toto's been in a situation where he's been challenged. He's been in a situation obviously where he came into the team, the driver has already signed, the engine was already in place. And he's done a great job to keep that team winning. But there's been no real competition. So this is the first time that, it's a true scrap. It's a true competition. And there's a respect, I think, between the teams. But I think, we operate in very different ways. I very much want to be in the front line. I'll sit on the pit wall with the strategists and the engineers, being intrinsically involved in the race. Toto will sit in the garage next to the press guy. So they're different functions, they're different roles, they're different outlooks. But of course the competition is fierce, and there's no holds barred.
And in terms of the atmosphere within the team, what would you say it is at the moment? Is it a sort of nervous tension about everything that's still to come? Because there's a lot of racing still to go. You don't want to get ahead of yourself.
Well, we've been through a huge amount. We had to go through a restructure earlier in the year because of the cost cap. We've just emerged on the other side out of COVID and all the challenges that presented. But I think the way that the team has worked together and come up with a really competitive car this year, I think it's just a genuine excitement and buzz. You walk around the factory, there's an eagerness to go racing. And you can feel that energy all around, the facility and the campus here. And I think that's great. That's who we are. We're not an OEM. We're as famously called, a fizzy drinks company. Racing against some of the biggest brands in Formula One, and now we're doing something completely nuts. and building our own engine for the future. And that's by far the biggest challenge we've taken on in Formula One. But Formula One, like any team, it's a team sport. It's about the people and the way the people work together, the belief that they have, and the way they work as a team.
Christian, why do you think that Red Bull has got it so right this year? Because traditionally, the last year of a set of rule changes is not the time for the order to suddenly be changed. We saw that, with how Red Bull dominated up until 14, and then the Mercedes domination. You wouldn't really expect somebody to come up and start challenging what has been the perceived norm.
Yeah, I mean, over the last 4 or 5 years, we've had circuits that we've been strong at, and we've been able to opportunistically take wins and victories. But I have to say, we owe a great deal to Honda this year as well, who really, in their last year, in Formula One, have really gone for it this year, and they've introduced a power unit that is comparable to the Mercedes. So suddenly we've got the tools to go head to head with. I think that's what the team is absolutely relishing, and going to a race where you've got a chance of winning, it's a very different feeling than knowing that actually we're going to need something special this weekend to get a result.
But it seems that you go to every track with a chance of winning now. It's not that we might have thought, Sochi is going to be a Mercedes track, and Austin you guys have always done well at, and then there's a few sort of question marks. But the ones which might have been the hot ones, for example, your Singapores, they're not on the calendar, so it's a little, it is more fluid. It
is fluid. I mean, Monza last race, we had that marked down as a Mercedes event, and they're probably frustrated they didn't extract more, because certainly after P1 they looked as if they got, and after qualifying, 3 or 4 tenths on us, and so not to have done more damage there, I think they'd probably be disappointed in. I think Sochi, likewise to Monza, is a Mercedes stronghold, but thereafter I think it will be difficult to choose. There'll be swings and roundabouts over the remaining 7 races. And when you're in there giving your talks, your debriefs to, everybody who works there, which is something that you've always prided yourself on, are you mentioning the championship? Are you saying that this could be ours, or are you doing the sporting cliche of every day as it comes? Now look, the next 12 weeks will determine whether we win a championship or not, and so it's what we put into it in this period, and it's every member of the team is leaving no stone unturned. This is our time that we have to throw everything that we can at this championship. We've got to be reliable, we've got to be operationally sharp, the pit stops have got to be strong, the strategy's got to be good, the pace in the car's got to be good, we've got to get whatever performance we can onto the car. And we've got 8 cup finals, basically, to ensure that we deliver at our very best. And it's only if we're at our very best that we can succeed. We've proved we can do it. We've proved to ourselves that we can do it. Mercedes are beatable. Nobody would have thought this time last year, with arguably their most competitive car ever, that with an evolution of regulations, we'd be in a position to challenge. And, we've got ourselves into that position. But something that you must be very proud of, and Red Bull are very proud of, is that the turnover of staff is not huge. So a lot of the people who were winning championships, 7 years ago, they're still there. Absolutely. That hasn't gone away. These people still know how to win a world championship. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of them in slightly different roles as they're, developing within the organisation. But when you look on our pit wall now, whether it's Jonathan Wheatley performing the team management role, whether it's Adrian sitting next to me, whether it's Rocky, who was Sebastian's race engineer, who's now the head of race engineering, the strategist, Will Courtney, it's the same group of people. We've had huge, and great consistency through the tough years, and it would have been very easy for them to pursue other opportunities. But I think it comes back to this culture and environment that we have here, that it's inclusive, that it's competitive, that it's fun. It has to be fun, because if you don't enjoy what you do, why are you doing it? And I think that's the key thing about this championship. We're loving the competition, and the more Toto gets wound up, the more fun it becomes. And Christian, I'm not sure if you ever get a day off work, but when you do get a day off work,
is it easy to switch off? For example, like after Italy, before you've got this, big trip to Russia, were you able to take time and just try and decompress?
I think it's important to be able to switch off. I mean, it's always at the back of your mind, but I've got a young family, and there's nothing more precious than family time. And then something you'll be able to relate to. I'm a great lover of animals, and we've got a whole bunch of horses, and now I've been talked into buying a low-level racehorse, a point-to-pointer. So we're training this horse. I'm not riding it, and that's going to be, it'll make its debut in January, I think. But that's a whole new, we're training it at home, and the kids are getting involved, and that's fun. It's just something different. But my wife's pretty competitive, so she said, if we're going to do it, we can't just turn up and take part. We've got to win.
Yeah, she's fully committed.
So she's on the horse side. She's fully committed.
And who do you talk to? If we've got like drivers coming to you and all these people in the factory coming to you, who do you sit down and talk to and say, God, that was a tough weekend? Or do you keep your own counsel?
I think it's always the ones that you're closest to that you take things out of, or you take their counsel. And I have to say, my wife is a great support. She's been in a pressured world. She knows what pressure is, from what she did in her career, and so of course it's always the ones closest to you that that you offload on, and that can offer sometimes some perspective from a complete from a completely outside point of view, gives you a good perspective. And she always says to me, look, a pat on the back is 6 inches from a kick up the arse. So it keeps,
you're treading a fine line.
It keeps your feet on the ground.
We know that Max is such a great talent, and he came in as a spiky character when he was 16 years old. Is he a difficult person to manage, to try and control? Do you even want to try and control him?
I think Max is probably one of the most straightforward drivers I've worked with, because he's binary in his approach. He appreciates absolute openness and honesty, and and vice versa. You hear some of his radio transmissions are brutally honest, and that's just the way he is. I think that he doesn't give a lot away to the public. He's quite a private individual, and I think when you actually spend time with him and you get to know the real Max Verstappen, he's just a really nice young guy that's totally passionate about his racing, very appreciative of the situation that he's in. But he's super hungry, and he's so motivated. I don't think I've ever met a driver so motivated or so hungry to achieve his goal, his target. And so in terms of working with him, managing him, you just sit down and you have an open conversation, and he'll listen. He might have a differing opinion, but by the end of it, you've always converged to a solution. And he never takes anything away. Nothing festers. You deal with it, move on.
You must get flashbacks sometimes, because I always think when you hear Max and GP talking on team radio and how GP controls him and is quite totalitarian.
They're like an old married couple, those two.
But it's a little bit like how Rocky was with Seb.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that GP and Max, the dynamic between the two of them, sometimes you wonder who's the engineer and who's the driver. It's confusing to work out which one's which, but they know each other so well. And GP does a great job of handling Max on the track, and the way he engineers the car, and that relationship is crucial, because it's the key interface between the driver and his team, because the engineer is having to interpret what the driver wants and reflect that in changes onto the car. And they've got a working partnership that is equally as strong as the one with Rocky and Sebastian used to be.